Hello and welcome to Hidden Existence, and it's Anything Goes, number 18. That seems like,
Really?
yeah, I'm not lying. Hang on, I just think my mic's a little bit, no, my mic's fine. How you doing, Jason?
Sorry about that. My allergies have been killing me all day. I'm doing well. I'm glad to be back. It's like I was gone for 2 weeks, and now we're back, and everything's back to normal. I feel good about it.
Good, good. I'm glad you're back. I've missed
Yeah.
you. Hello to everyone in the chat. And I need to just apologise to the mods that I have not given them a shout out recently. And it's not intentional, but I've thought about it. And I know I should give a shout out to all of you who put the time and effort in. And I do appreciate everything that you do. So I thought I'd better get that out of the way before I forget at the end. Also, it gets quite late. Last night was 2:00 for me, and
Ooh.
the morning, and get me on at 10:00 at my time, and you'll see a much brighter and more with it, Daniela. But anyway, that's done. So you've been out researching, have you not?
Yeah. We were out in Brown Springs. Unfortunately, we were hoping to get slightly larger crew. Unfortunately, everything sort of, everyone had things happen. That's life, right? But it was me, Tex, and Randy. We were out there just doing our thing. Um, we didn't see much. I tried a few things to see if we'd get any kind of response that may be a little out of the ordinary. We'll talk about it more tomorrow on the Texas show. But we did have an interesting thing happen. So one of the things we were trying to do is that I have, it's been alleged that I snore a little bit.
Oh,
My wife is actually breaking out laughing in the next room. It's been so I may snore a tiny bit. So I had the windows rolled down. I was in the car, basically playing bait because people have recounted that snoring they're willing to come in because they know that you're asleep. I couldn't stay asleep the entire time, but I had this weird dream around 3:30 because it woke me up from it. And the thing is, I don't remember my dreams like at all. I dreamt like I saw three creatures made out of fire in the field that's just right there. Now we have a camera on the car. The driver's side, in the thoughts that maybe they would come up to investigate, maybe we could catch them there. But so there's this open field right here to my right. I thought I saw three creatures in it. I remember the eyes, the whole 9 yards. It was just weird. And then I woke up. I'm like 3:30. I go roll back over, go back to sleep. I wake up again just after 4, and I kind of roll over and I see Tex's headlamp. He's parked like 40 feet away, 40, 50 feet away, but I can see his headlamp moving all over the place. So I'm like, maybe something's happened. So I put my flip flops on, hop out, and before I can even say hi, he's like, dude, were you out here running around last night? I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, like 30, 40 minutes ago, were you running around? I said, no, I've been in the car the entire time. That's the point. It's a trap. I don't want to scare them off. And he's like, okay, I swear to you, I thought y'all were messing with me because I saw someone behind your car. I thought you or Randy had gotten up to walk around. Well, long story short, when we finally get to talk to Randy, no, he hadn't gotten out either. And not only did Tex see a person, he heard 2 different steps of bipedal footprints. Now we knew there was a raccoon out there. He had already wandered off, and there was a possum. And he watched the possum. He's like, well, maybe I'm mishearing the footsteps, right? And it's all in his head. So he's listening for the possum to go off. And it's like, nope, that's clearly not what we were hearing or what he was hearing. But we find out from Randy, same thing. He about 3:30 sort of got woken up, but only like halfway. But he thought there was someone outside the car, and then when he kind of repositioned himself, it's gone. So he wasn't. So he thought it was all in his head as well. Texas proposed that my dream wasn't necessarily a dream per se, but rather I did see something, but I was in that half, and so my brain's like reinterpreting the information. So now I think it's a dream versus actually seeing, because I wasn't fully awake. I don't know what happened. All I know is we didn't catch anything on the cameras. We actually left out bacon and sausage and bread that we had toasted on the back of Texas truck, just right there, food, and nothing touched it at all,
Right.
which I thought was weird. Like nothing came up to eat it. There was some files that were corrupted on one of Randy's trail cams that were sort of in a good spot. We were able to access them though, and he says he didn't see anything on them. I've asked him to see if we can get a hand on the original corrupted files because my son wants to take a look at them to see if he can figure out how they were corrupted. Because there were files before and files after that were perfectly fine. They said we have access to files that were corrupted. It doesn't seem like there's anything on them, to my knowledge. So it wasn't like they took a photo of something, but my son was more interested in why they were corrupted. It's like, don't get me wrong, could just be a glitch, could be a weird coincidence, but they were glitched out about the right time. So it's really, for me, right? It's really getting me to ask some really hard questions, right? About is it possible these things can see in infrared? Like, are they able to see that? Because the thing is, most mammals can't. In fact, some of the reading we've done suggests no mammals can see IR, but certain nocturnal lemurs, they have a different type of vision from normal primates, and it's possible they could maybe perceive some degree of infrared. So I don't know. It's one of those things where I'm starting to ask some questions about maybe the assumptions we're making about these creatures. Maybe we're not necessarily looking at apes per se or hominids. What if we're looking at some sort of a lemur? We know that lemurs used to grow significantly larger than they do today. In fact, I was looking at a reconstruction of a great lemur that was a little bit larger than a gorilla, and I'm going to be honest, I could see that being mistaken for a dog man.
Right.
And then that thought kind of pulled me back, and it's like, well, hold on. Maybe we need to go back and re-examine this whole Bigfoot phenomenon to begin with. What if they're not apes, but there's some sort of lemur? And then that makes more sense that you have we do have flat-faced lemurs. Then we have lemurs with much longer snouts. That makes perfect sense for the dogman versus Bigfoot sort of mentality. It's like maybe what we're seeing is just two different subspecies of the same thing, or two different breeds. One, again, look at a pug, right? Completely flat snout versus, like, say, a whippet, which has this long, slender face. Maybe that's what we're dealing with here. I mean, they're both dogs. Like, again, pug and a whippet, they're both dogs, right? But they can still interbreed because they're still the same species. So maybe that's what we're seeing is some sort of large lemur. Again, we don't know anything more. There's no definitive evidence, but I now have to throw that into the category of possible. Yep.
There you go. I think that's a male.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's the first picture I could grab. But I could see with the legs, maybe, and the ears up like that. I mean, anything's possible, isn't it?
Yeah.
How do we know? We don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But Patrick,
exactly. That's the thing is we don't. So it's just another question, is all.
Yeah, regarding the food, and I think this can take a while, can't it, to set yourself up in a place to get established there before things can happen.
They do. And the thing is, one of the reasons we went with that was the creation of smell and scent. The thing is, people had actually tried apples in that location as well, and they actually just rotted on the stand, which I found really, again, I find that odd because there's deer in that area. I'm surprised the deer or the raccoons didn't eat them. So I found it a little weird, but that's the thing, right? If they are there, and there's significant evidence to suggest that they are there, then maybe some of these animals aren't necessarily going for food that's left out because they know the Sasquatch will go after it. But then maybe the Sasquatch isn't going for those apples because they're like, yeah, we're not dumb. We know what those are. You're trying to track us or trap us. So we tried to create a situation where it looked like they would feel more comfortable coming up and taking the food. And particularly where we put the camera. But if considering they seem to move in a way that was completely different from how they've normally approached the camp, I'm very inclined to think they can see IR now. I was sort of toss-ups like maybe it's IR, maybe it's EM, maybe it's just random chance. But the fact that they completely go out of their way they completely went out of their way to avoid our camera traps entirely, they had to see them. They had to know they were there for some reason. What that is, again, I'm not going to say 100% because I don't know. But it means maybe what we need to do is start looking at more passive systems for observation where it's just a camera that's running. It's not emitting IR. There's no motion sensitivity. It's just a security cam that's hidden somewhere and something that they wouldn't notice as odd. And it's just, just running. It's entirely passive. Maybe that's the next step we really need to go to. Whatever it is, I don't know why they're able to avoid it, but they are.
I mean, Pat Turner's, he keeps talking about drones. He's getting a good drone. Is another way to find these things and get some sort of, clear as you can, ideally video of it moving. But yeah, something needs to change, doesn't it? Because obviously everyone's been trying these things, and maybe some people are getting them on trail cams. I've heard some people are, but they're not, sharing.
Well, I know for a fact that there are people who've gotten some really good photos on trail cams. Again, this is where I have to be, unfortunately, I have to go almost CIA level vague on this. There is a purported photograph, the provenance of which I believe wholeheartedly. It's straight up looking at a Bigfoot that had actually grabbed the trail cam and thrown it down, but you can see it. It's perfectly clear. But the gentleman will not allow it to be released for reasons that if anyone were to think about it for 30 seconds, you'd be like, yeah, I get why you don't want that out. So I don't. That's why I'm sort of half and half. It's like we know that people have caught them on trail cams. I'm inclined to think that maybe what's happening a lot of times is it's the females that are getting caught on camera that are nursing, so they're more apt to go after food. And my wife, and it seems to be pretty much all mammals, will tell you straight up, it's called baby brain, right? Particularly when you're pregnant and you're nursing, so much of your body is dedicated to creating nourishment for the infant that it just, things slip your mind. It does seem like females are more inclined to come into cities. They seem to be more curious, or they feel more comfortable coming near places. But it seems like, again, Patty is a female. There's, the one where it's purportedly picking up apples, that supposedly has a child or an infant on it. So it seems like maybe the females are prone to this, and it may be that they're not as sensitive because they're nursing, so maybe they don't see the IR. So at best, these are just theories and they're thoughts and they're questions we have to explore. But whatever it is, our assumptions are false, or we would have caught them by now. We need to really start looking at these creatures and say, okay, maybe there's something more to them than we are imagining. Because I think the problem is we're wildly underestimating them, whether that's their intelligence or their biological assets. I don't know. Maybe it's both. But they are very keen on staying away from humans. Let me phrase this. They're very keen on staying invisible to humans. Like they seem to know. Again, maybe they just know what a camera is. I mean, I think this is one of those questions we have to start asking is, Tex has publicly said he thinks they're at the level of like killer whale. Okay. That's pretty dang smart. People don't really sort of understand, like that's near human intelligence.
We talked about this last night. Elephants, dolphins have all got that communication intelligence to, they're clever. So it doesn't put Bigfoot as something more special. All right, we can't find it. That's pretty special.
Yeah.
But sometimes I think we maybe sometimes really blowing up this Bigfoot, having these incredible skills. Maybe it's just that one skill of being able to run like as fast as possible.
Yeah.
Quietly.
Or just pay attention. Or just pay attention to what's going on and be like, you know what? Humans suck. I want to stay away.
Yeah.
But again,
it's pretty much,
yeah.
An intelligent creature, but just an animal like any other animal that's got, natural instinct.
Well, and if they have some ability to see IR, right, infrared, for those just making certain, if they have any ability to perceive that at all, well, what are we doing when we put up trail cams? We're putting up these giant infrared spotlights. Well, all they have to be is smart enough to go, you know what? That's not normal. I'm going to stay away from that. That's all they have to do. So again, they don't necessarily have to know what they are. They just have to be like, well, that's freaky. I'm not going near that. And that makes perfect sense. It's an animal. If it's just an animal, they're not necessarily being like, yeah, let me try and figure out what this is. They're going to be more like, that's not normal, and I can see that's not natural. I want to stay away from it. That's all they have to perceive.
What about when people are gifting then? I'm not talking about food, talking about items, marbles, whatever. Why are they taking those, but they don't want to go near that box?
Well, they're not emitting infrared. Again, this goes back to it's almost support for the infrared theory. Again, it's just a theory, but marbles don't emit infrared, right? You give them an object; it's just an object. They get it. It's a shiny rock to them, right? It's just a thing. But these trail cams are emitting, infrared or something, and maybe that's the thing, right? They're like, hey, it just. Yeah, they're just like it's weird. They don't like it. So they're staying away from
it. Tim Tarabocha, hi. Yes, they can see IR, and yes, they know you are trying to bait them. They will most likely avoid. Don't forget they're interdimensional. Okay, so say they're interdimensional. Why would they even appear to us at all?
That's a great question, and I go back to I don't necessarily want to separate all of the paranormal phenomena that we associate with Bigfoot. My only question is, I think we need to go back to the drawing board and say, hey, why don't we actually try reevaluating all the phenomena separately and seeing where the actual overlaps are? Because I have a sneaking suspicion that what's happening is that there is paranormal phenomena out there. The problem is we're combining it with the Bigfoot phenomena.
This is exactly what we were talking about last night.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think maybe some people really, or maybe it wasn't explained very well when Leon was trying to say, people don't always know what they're seeing, and it wasn't meant in any disrespectful way or trying to tell you you're not seeing what you're seeing, but it's the connections we make with what we're seeing. So if I use Jay for an example, who saw Sasquatch, also saw an orb, those two might not necessarily be connected. So it doesn't mean the two things didn't happen, but let's not put that with Bigfoot. If you want to go down the flesh and blood route, if you want to just try and focus on one line here, and you have to separate at some point, you have to start separating the data, which is what he calls it. It doesn't mean it doesn't exist and it didn't happen. It just means that if they're not connected, then you need to drop the two that, saying that they happen because of each other, because this is where the lines start getting crossed and making it like I said last night, it's like muddying the water. If we just stick to facts, I know we don't really have any facts, but not to connect everything and say this is Bigfoot and it's all connected.
Right.
Maybe it isn't,
So this goes back to the whole question of the Gordian Knot, right? For those who don't know, there was Alexander the Great came into the city that he was conquering, and they said, look, you don't even have to conquer us. Our elders, yes, Trinity Paracryptid, come to Texas Front Porch tomorrow. You're going to hear the rest of it. We're going to have a really detailed conversation about a lot of this.
Excellent.
So it's definitely worth listening to. Gordian Knot was created by the elders. They're like, anyone who can undo this knot is worthy to be our leader. So they're like, look, if you can figure this out, you don't even have to conquer us. We'll happily become your subjects. And he looks at it, and he takes out his sword, and he just cuts it in half. And they accepted that as an answer. Because all they had to say is, you just had to untie this knot. They never said how you had to do it. My point is, this is a very complicated and complex question that we're trying to answer. The point that Tex and I have come to is the answers we think we have not availed us at all. Or we'd have something. We need to go back. I am not opposed, and everyone who's listened to me for more than 5 minutes knows I'm not opposed to anything paranormal. I think it is. We have to understand the paranormal, or we won't get any of it. But where does Bigfoot begin and paranormal end? Are they the same thing? Are they interconnected? The problem is we're too quick to say yes and not necessarily to say we don't necessarily know. Because here, let me present a couple of options. What if Bigfoot is just an ape or a lemur or a hominid? We don't know. Let's say it's there. It's a tangible creature. It eats, it poops, it procreates, and it's just out there doing what it does. It's a fit like we do, like deer do, like anything else. But they have it in. But what if they have a very small population? Now, here's the thing. Do we see them? Yes. Do they leave tracks? Yes. So we know they exist. They are physical creatures. But what if some of these other things that we call Bigfoot aren't actually Bigfoot? Again, in my book, I have numerous stories of the Goat Man at White Rock Lake, and people actually see a 7-foot tall, hair-covered goat man with horns, the whole 9 yards. Okay, they're seeing it. It's a real thing. You go back through history, you see things like the Leshy, the Shayadim, fawns, and satyrs, but they're the same thing, just Greek and Roman. The simple fact of the matter is, what if we are taking this very ancient thought, but the problem is there are these supernatural beings, but we're combining them with the Bigfoot lore, and we've mashed them so inevitably together that we can't separate the physical, real Bigfoot from the urban legend Bigfoot from the mythological creatures that are paranormal. We don't really know what the answers are here. All I'm saying is let's go back. Let's start dissecting what we actually know, and maybe we need to re-examine the lore. One of the things I think from that anyone who's really into cryptozoology and the paranormal about my book is I go into great detail to try and separate where mythological Bigfoot and real Bigfoot disappear. Because once you start getting into the lore, I think the problem is we're so reliant on lore, we forget, hold on, you don't know that lore is actually about that creature. In fact, that's something I picked up that was something I was the most surprised on, was to see how much of the Bigfoot lore in our area was connected to just the event from Lake Worth. They took what was written by Jim Mars and they overlaid it on all these different things. And the problem is some of these are clearly not Bigfoot. They're not a Bigfoot-like creature, like the White Rock Lake Goat Man. That's not a Bigfoot. It's a paranormal entity, but it has that Bigfoot lore superimposed on it. So we really need to step back and start re-examining these things from scratch. And we need to get rid of a lot of assumptions that we're making, because maybe there are interdimensional creatures, but maybe those aren't Bigfoot. And maybe they want us. And here's the other question, and this is something Tex asked months ago, and I think it's a great question. Or at least it's my variance of this question. What if these interdimensional creatures, these paranormal creatures, want us to think they're Bigfoot? Maybe we're chasing phantoms. We are literally chasing phantoms, but we've put this Bigfoot moniker on it. And that's why we're not really getting anywhere. We're not chasing the right things. And so, and maybe that's deliberate. Maybe it's us. We're putting the Bigfoot moniker on it, or maybe they want us to perceive them as Bigfoot, so we won't actually understand what we're seeing, or what we're learning about.
Can you hear that banging? Is that you? Just something
Mm,
just making me really paranoid. There's like noise going on behind me. I don't know what it is.
no.
No, I agree with you. And you know, is it not worth people putting time into? Anybody who wants to research this subject and is putting energy and time into it, just go down a one route for an experiment, for an example, because there's nothing to be lost here or get. You know, maybe there's something to be gained, but to really think about if you're going to go down the flesh and blood route, stick to what is possible within the flesh and blood, you know, capacity. If it's anything with lights and orbs and things, just strip that away because it's going to blur your path, isn't it?
Well, can I throw one more wrench into this whole question?
Yeah.
Again, this is probably going to be even more controversial. What if the problem is not everyone is capable of seeing the orbs and the paranormal stuff? What if it's about sensitivity? Again, my wife can't eat gluten. She can't. She's not doing it because it's not trendy. She literally can't eat it. I can't smoke marijuana because I'm allergic to it. I went to an art school. I assure you, I know that I'm allergic. I have no desire to smoke marijuana. I've never had a desire to smoke marijuana, but let me assure you, I'm very aware of how allergic I am to it. My kids can't get away with anything. But those are physical. But who's to say that the supernatural or the paranormal isn't the same way? Maybe some people have the ability to perceive things more clearly than other people, or just differently than other people. So maybe that's the problem. What if some people are seeing the orbs and other people can't because they're just not capable of it? Well, now we have an even bigger problem, because how do you verify that something's real? Well, not everyone can actually see it. Again, we don't know, and I'm just saying we need to start. We need to start re-asking questions that we've on things that we've assumed, or we're never going to move forward on this problem.
You're making it more complicated now, aren't you?
That's what I do. I'm sexy and I make things complicated. That's why you have me around.
Yeah. Well, there's really nothing more to say about it then, is there?
No, that's the thing, right? I mean, the problem is, it's like anything else in life that's worth doing. We have to be willing to just sort out the puzzle. We can't have our pride get in the way. I mean, that's
right.
That's the problem. If we're emotionally invested in our beliefs about a thing, then we're never going to move forward. We have to be willing to say, okay, what is the truth, and how do I go about uncovering? Not, I know the truth, let me prove it. I'm trying to discover the truth, and it's two different mentalities. The problem is, most humans, we spend our lives trying to validate our beliefs about the world, instead of saying, what is the world around us? In fact, I would argue, we had this conversation before, I think Thomas Sowell is probably the greatest philosopher of the 20th and 21st century. He's an economist. So much of his writing is dedicated to saying, look, let's actually look at what we can find. Let's look at the answers, right? Because we have so many problems in our world that are we could actually maybe fix, or at least move forward, if we were willing to look at the numbers and say, what are the facts? What do we see? Because we've tried a lot of things. Why don't we try and learn from what we've experimented with and say, what works right? What doesn't work at all? What's sort of okay in certain situations, and start applying this knowledge? We need to do the same thing here and say, look, there is a truth here. Maybe Bigfoot is interdimensional, and maybe it is a fallen angel, and maybe we're all just matrix, in some sort of big computer system. Great. But we have to be willing for that to be an option. But what if Bigfoot is nothing more than just a great ape that's bipedal? But then there's this other stuff going on. We have to be willing to say, let's ask these questions. Let's go back to square one, and let's move forward. And let's just be willing to be open to whatever comes our way. If you think Bigfoot's flesh and blood, great, wonderful, have at it. But don't try to prove it's flesh and blood. Find what the evidence is telling you. If you think it's interdimensional, great. but don't be willing to ignore the fact that maybe it is just flesh and blood and there's this other phenomena out there. We just have to be willing to accept the truth, whatever it is.
Yeah. And we don't know the truth. And that's why we can guess at it. This is what we need to do, is to, I know it sounds silly to me, start making guesses, but it's almost like the logic puzzles that you do when it's in a grid, and you're eventually having to rule out things,
Right.
whether you're right or not. It's worth the experiment. It's worth trying to go down that route, to change your mindset, just to see where you get to, whether you're right or wrong. Because at the moment, it doesn't really matter, because we don't know. We're all still trying to get to that answer, and I just think there's got to be another way to find the answers. It's my dog snoring. That's what I can hear. I've just worked it out. It's no noise going on. It's the dog.
Well, I can't hear it through your mic, so we're fine.
I think it's going up the vibrations anyway.
Do you need your dog a CPAP machine?
No, she's not normally this noisy. Barney used to snore all the time, really loud. I could feel the floor moving, but she must be really knackered or something. So what was I saying?
Your dog is drunk now?
Yeah. Drunk? No. Yeah. Staying open-minded. Hi, Tim. Staying open-minded, but you can just stick to a rule. Let's just try this method way of thinking, and to stop thinking that people are right. People who are just repeating stuff that other people have said. It's not necessarily the right way or the truth. And it's just such a, subject just does my head in. You hit a brick wall with it sometimes.
Yeah.
But what I thought about today is someone on the show last night talked about it's, those rabbit holes, it's going down the rabbit hole. And there's, the paranormal side, there's the Bigfoot side. But, realistically, you can only go down one hole at a time, can't you? You can only...
Speak for yourself, young lady.
Well, I know. I'm not trying to, if you've got other skills, that's fair enough. But generally and realistically, you should only be going down, if you're going to do it, go down one hole. If that's no good, go down the other. It doesn't sound very good, this, does it? I have to try and change.
Do you have any idea how many jokes I have just absolutely flatlined because I'm not about to be banned from YouTube?
Yes. Alice, exactly.
Yes.
Those, the rabbit hole, of course.
Yes.
I just can't say the word hole anymore without your face is how I feel. So anyway, let's change the subject.
Let's change the metaphor here. So I think this really, to sum this whole question up, is we have to be willing to pursue the truth wherever the facts lead us. Now, I think the other thing is we need to start asking the question: is this phenomena that we're seeing, is it actually Bigfoot related or not? Right? Because again, my theory is that there is a physical Bigfoot. It's a physical creature that's running around, but then there's this other paranormal stuff, and I don't know that the two are related. Beyond the fact that maybe the paranormal wants us to think it is Bigfoot, so that we actually don't understand what it is that they're doing. I don't know what the answer is, but we need to be willing to entertain these other thoughts instead of saying paranormal phenomena, Bigfoot in the same boat. They must be connected. They don't necessarily need to be connected. I think one of the big problems that we have here is that no, it's not the Matrix, because Keanu Reeves is not the one. He's just not. It's actually Agent Smith. That's a whole other kettle of fish. It's that's a whole other theory. But no, the simple fact of the matter is we need to be willing to say, hey, maybe the problem is this is just what we're intercepting them, right? Maybe this is just the point where all of these things cross, and so that's why we see them in here. Maybe that's not because that these things are here; they're just moving through. But this is the point where we run across them. Well, that changes the nature, because now the problem is it's how, well, all we're knowing is this is how we see them. This is when we encounter them, not necessarily that that's where they live or what they're doing, or maybe that's the bigger problem here is we're looking at them only where we find them, not necessarily where they should be.
I'll Squatch Australia. Go out if possible and have your own experiences. It doesn't happen to everyone though, does it?
No.
It's, some people could be hiking for years and years and never ever experience it.
Yeah.
Some
I mean,
people
people who look for them don't never run across them.
It's one pill makes you larger, one pill makes you small, but the one that mother gives you don't do anything at all. Okay. Spirits do exist. Yeah, I do believe that there is other stuff out there. But is it Bigfoot? I don't know. It's just such a mystery, isn't it? That's what makes me there, with it. And yeah, it doesn't seem natural because of the elusiveness of it and how little, in this day and age, how little we have on it.
Well, exactly. And let's take a step back. Let's throw, this is, Bigfoot's is sort of the main realm for everyone here, and it's emotional. So let's throw something in here that's just as elusive, if not even more so. It makes even almost less sense, which is the flying pterosaurs. People are seeing them in North Texas. I've seen one, but people see them, and yet these are, I mean, they're pterosaurs. They're not, you could argue Bigfoot's smart, near human level intelligence. You're not saying that about a flying lizard. They're not that smart. But we don't find bodies. We're not seeing them and catching them on camera. Why? Is it because they're just that, maybe it's just they're that critically endangered? I mean, there's lots of things that I haven't seen that I know are indigenous to the region. I've lived here mostly my entire life, right? So what if the problem is just that we aren't set up necessarily to even see them anymore? If my theory that they are the dragons of old, that they are the wyverns of old, that they are the Jersey Devil, things like that, then yeah, maybe it's just that we were able to see them more in the past because of how we lived our lives, the nature of our lives. We were more into, even 150 years ago, even 100 years ago, you had to be more in tune with nature, even if you were living in the city, than we are now. We live in concrete islands. We have the green wall that I discuss in my book, which you should buy 12 of right now on Amazon.com.
All right, yeah.
Yeah. Or you
what number is it now in the chart?
I think it's probably dropped off to like 5,731,000. I've stopped looking.
All right.
Oh, it's fine. But or again, if you want to email me, I can send you an autographed copy for $25 because I have to cover the shipping. But the simple fact of the matter is, it's like maybe the real problem is how we live our lives are preventing us from actually running across them. And if we add the fact that these are maybe just critically endangered animals, then the odds are actually stacked against us, right? So maybe that's how they say.
They're all over the place, though. I mean, I can't see that.
But are they all over the place? If they're in, sort of, what if there's one group that's the pterosaurs that lives in, the North Texas and Southern Oklahoma. So it's one grouping of them, right? Then there's another group in Georgia, and then there's another group in California. Well, they're not really all over the place. They're in small population centers. And again, if they're migratory, like let's look at like giant sea turtles. Yeah, they return to the same spot every year to spawn, but then they go off and they cover thousands of miles. These things can fly. And what if they're small when they're here, and then they reach a certain age of maturity, they fly out, and those are the larger ones that we're seeing in California, or we're seeing in the Rio Grande Valley. I mean, again, all we have are questions, but the simple fact of the matter is, I find it so hard to believe that we don't have more on these things when they're just reptiles. They're not that bright, and yet we don't have that much on them. And the problem is, I found there are people who say, yeah, we've seen uh, a skull, an unfossilized skull of one, but then we go back to buy it and it disappears. Well, again, I'm the first one to say I don't believe in most grand conspiracies anyway, because I don't see humans being smart enough to pull it off. But that doesn't mean we can't stop and say, well, hold on. A lot of people have talked about people from the Smithsonian coming and buying oddities. Mostly it happened in the 1800s, but is it possible that this is still going on, that there is some sort of concerted effort to suppress certain information? Well, now we've got this whole other thing in this question now. In this big mathematical equation that we're trying to equal out, maybe there is something working to oppose our understanding of it. Maybe they don't understand it as well, but they're preventing us from understanding because they find it uncomfortable for whatever reason.
Yeah. I just, I can't think why it would be kept so secret. I've just been reading the chat. Sorry, I've been listening to you.
No, you're fine.
I was like, Tim Egan says, maybe one day we'll have technology that will aid us in answering these questions. But what more do we need?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, really, when we've got like, elite SAS or whatever you call it, assassins and people like that. I mean, surely someone with some training like that, maybe they have already. I don't know. This is
right.
The thing. What's the procedure when you find something, you send it to someone? Who's the one that stamps the paper and goes, yeah, this is an official species? I mean,
exactly.
What is the actual procedure? How many things are involved? How many agencies are involved in that happening? And is anyone kind of rung up, the head office or somewhere and said, can we talk about Bigfoot? I mean, has anybody rung anybody to say anywhere? I mean, I don't. I'm in England. Where would you ring? Where would you try?
Well, so that's actually that's an even better question, right? Because to a point, there isn't one person. Like there isn't like, hey, animals, official animal people like this. Like there is no official animal people. It's just recognized species. In fact, I was talking to another cryptozoologist. I don't like to name drop, so I won't.
Okay.
Actually, that's a lie. I name drop all the time. I just don't do it in the chat. It was Ken Gerhardt.
Oh,
it was at the Jefferson thing. I know. I don't like it. Just makes me feel pumped. Yeah, I hate when people are like, so I was talking to. I'm like, don't do that. Anyway, but I forget the exact phrase he used. He talks about like the idea of species, right? You have groupers and you have splitters. For example, I live in the Southwest. All across the Southwest, northern Mexico, you have rattlesnakes. Terrible creatures. Have you ever seen someone who gets bitten by a rattlesnake? They're absolutely terrible things. Well, there are, depending on who you ask, there's either one species of rattlesnake with regional variances in color, size, and pattern, or we have 60 or 80 different species of rattlesnake or subspecies of rattlesnake. Well, which one's right? It's your opinion, right? And that's the problem is there is no official, this is how we do it. It's sort of, you have to have the evidence provided and everyone kind of says, okay. And there's going to be different protections between different states and different nations. So it goes back to there isn't just one person we can call and be like, hey, I would like to put this on, we have to have real physical evidence to do that, but then we have to make the argument that these are real creatures. And here, let me ask, is it about technology? What if technology is our biggest problem? It goes back to the beginning, to the opening section of this episode. If they can see infrared, then our technology is actually making it easier for them to avoid us.
That's an interesting point.
And what if, again, they just recognize, like, what if one of the reasons they were able to, and again, I'm open to the idea that they may just be a people group, right? But maybe the reason they had a different relationship with the American Indians that lived here and some of these other regions is because the level of technology they were at did not make those humans as big a threat. maybe the Europeans show up with guns and they're like, this changes the nature a little bit. Maybe they sort of understand that it's a very different threat level. Because let's look at European history for just a second. I'm open to the idea that maybe the problem is what we call, say, not giants. I think giants are a unique thing. And maybe trolls, they may be Neanderthals. But what about the ogres of ancient myth, right? What were they? They were large. They were hairy. You see the myths about the wild men, but they're very large. They are ugly. Again, you have the myths about them eating children, things like that. Well, you can find stuff like that associated with Bigfoot. What if the European ogre was just a Bigfoot? That's just the mythological, name for them. Well, if that's the case, then again, maybe they were, as long as Europeans were able, they had more primitive weaponry, more hand-to-hand combat. They weren't as big a threat, so they were more bold. And maybe that's, again, so maybe the problem isn't that we need better technology. Maybe the technology is the problem. That's why they're like, we want to stay as far away from y'all as possible because y'all are a bigger threat to us than y'all used to be. So not only are we just putting out infrared so that they can see us, and we're basically broadcasting our presence, they're just like, you know what? Y'all are a legitimate threat to us, so we're going to stay back. Maybe it's no more complicated than that.
Yeah, we could actually just be making it worse for ourselves, doing what we're doing. So, yeah, we need to rethink. I'm just at home here, but I do think about it. There's got to be another way. I know there were ants to film with them. I just don't think it would be responsible to put it out there. Okay. Well, we have talked about drones, sending some high-tech drones out. I don't know if you want to share if it's up to you anyway. But yeah, it's just never ending, is it? How we're going to get further.
I don't think it's never ending. I think it's just we have to be willing to try new things. What we have a skill set that works for certain animals, right? That we know about, and we've been able to recognize, but it doesn't necessarily mean that they work for all animals. We just need to be willing to try different things, and eventually we'll come across something. Okay. I don't know.
Let's go back to dead bodies. Like, I think, it's a heck of a thing to try and bury something that's 6 or 7 foot tall. I mean, it's a lot of digging. And maybe they don't bury like that. Maybe they bury in a different way. I don't know.
Let me tell you, I have tried hiding a body is one of the biggest problems that I have in my. Oh wait, this is overline.
It's not easy.
It's not easy hiding bodies. Yeah.
And I mean, I'll just say, because my dog died, Barney, around, just after Christmas, and I buried him in my front garden. And I thought, this will be fine. I can do this. And I had to ring my friend who's got a little mini digger. And I said, can you come round? And he dug me a great 3 by 3 foot hole. But there's no way I would have dug that. It's only going down 3 foot. Didn't need a lot of, but to try and, hide a body, to bury a body, unless they do it with rocks, I don't know. But someone made an interesting point last night, is maybe like a cat or maybe a bear's do it, I don't know. They just go off on their own and they maybe find a little cave or a little crevice or something. And maybe we're just not seeing them because they've gone somewhere dark, secluded and, out of the way to die.
And that's a real possibility. And I go back to Grover Krantz. So interesting little tidbit. My archaeology professor, who was basically my minor, long story short, archaeology is a big thing for me. He was actually mentored by Grover Krantz. So in many ways, I'm Grover Krantz's educational grandchild. Weird. weird way to look at it. But so I got some interesting insights into Grover Krantz from my personal mentor. And one of the things he talked about was for 40 years, and it's not a myth, this happened. He asked every person he met who ever went hiking, who worked in the forestry service for 40 years, every time he met them, had they ever seen the body of a dead bear? Not one person in 40 years said yes. Now, we know bears exist. We know that they die. We found their bodies. But the fact is, you can have bears running around, and yet you can talk to hundreds of people who are going hiking. They even work in the woods, and they never come across a body. How? Nature does not allow things to go to waste. We've done experiments. We'll put out a dead deer or whatever within minutes. Yeah, that's a name drop. I'll drop Grover Krantz, but within minutes, deer show up to scavenge off the body. Within a week, that body is gone.
Yeah,
completely gone. So it's like these things again. If it is that they are a smaller level, they have a near and critically endangered level, population level, then yeah, one of them. I mean, it just has to go off somewhere where we're not going to find them. We stick to trails.
Yeah,
they die, and their body's going to go to dust. Animals are going to come and scavenge off of it. Porcupines are going to eat the bones. That's how it happens, and that's assuming they aren't burying them, right?
Exactly.
I mean,
and even if they are burying them, the bones they're still going to be there.
But we have to find them. And it's like, who's running around randomly with a shovel, being like,
exactly.
Nope. I mean, we're not going to do it. We have to have. That's the problem. It's like there's so much working against us on the body thing. That's assuming they don't bury them. That's assuming they don't practice some form of excarnation, or maybe they eat them. Maybe they eat their own dead. Right? I mean, it's not a pleasant concept, but they wouldn't be the first species to do it.
That's if they hang around together.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe at some point they shoo their young away. Maybe it's something that I don't know. I'm just saying.
Go get a job, Junior.
Well, swans do it. Don't the other animals do it? Dogs do it. It gets to a point. Go on, get out. They don't want to hang around with each other anymore.
There's got to be some lone Bigfoot that dies alone out there or gets hurt. But the fact is, we're just not going to come across it, because unless you come across it within a few days, it's out.
Yeah.
And here's a great question that got brought up on our show. What if we've already found their remains? Right?
Yeah. And there is some museum somewhere in the light, in the stock room.
Just waiting.
Box.
What if because I mean, think about it. Do you find, we find unknown human remains? Like, if you don't find like the skull or even the pelvis, they may not necessarily know that this is not human. I mean, it's like if you were to find something that was 14 feet tall, which again there's a question if they get that big. But if you find something that's like, say, only 6.5 feet tall, they're not necessarily going to stand out. It's like, what did you find? I found a couple of rib bones. Well, then someone has to bring it into the cops. And then, but what are they doing? They're not going to do a full DNA test. They're just going to do an e-blast to see if it matches anyone that they were looking for. If it doesn't, guess what? It's unknown human remains.
Yeah.
It's possible we found them, but we just don't know no one's recognized them for what they are.
I've thought about this as well, that, we have bits, the clues are out there. We've got them. We're just not connecting them, or have access to them, even though they could be right under our noses. It's fascinating. I don't know where else to go with this, because
this is why I love forbidden archaeology, and I kind of have to go back to it every once in a while, because at a certain point you're like, we have no answers, and the problem is we have even less facts. The closest thing we have to facts on Bigfoot are the footprints. And I'm going to be honest, that's one I've even started to question a little bit. I want to talk more directly to some of these other experts and say, look, can we know for a fact that these aren't just how do we know there isn't some bear that's out there double stepping all the time? Right? Like, what if that's a problem? Like, what if that's actually our problem? Is that we have a bunch of, like, maybe bears when they get old, maybe their claws, aren't sharp enough to necessarily leave the imprint, and what we have is just a bunch of bears double stepping. How do we know that? So again, I'm not suggesting that that's an alternative. I'm just saying we need to start re-examining the questions. I do think the footprints are fact. So if they are, then great. That gives us something, but that's it. Forbidden archaeology, I love it because, like, look, we have an artifact. We can test the artifact. Is it real or is it not? Where was it found? What does it look like? What's it made of? Right? The fact that we can find float copper from the Great Lakes region in Greece tells us something and allows us to start piecing some things together that we didn't necessarily know previously. Finding lead objects that were clearly made by Romans in the 8th century AD in Arizona. That tells you something. The London Hammer tells you something. Finding carvings of what looks to be like an Elasmotherium in Nineveh. It's like, okay, well, these are interesting things that we can find and we can talk about because there's facts associated with them. Bigfoot, outside of those footprints, we ain't got much.
No.
In the way of tangible facts.
Some of the archaeology, though, as well, is a mystery, isn't it, of who even created some of these things that we just don't know about, which, again, is like the opposite to Bigfoot. He's out there, but you can't get him in the archaeology. You see it, but like, how on earth did they make these things? Or,
well, so
that big stuff.
Yeah. So again, it goes back to, right, it's like, well, we know they're there, but then how did they do it? Well, and also who did it? I mean, that's one of the reasons I didn't get into archaeology was because unfortunately, I got too good a look at how you find the wrong thing, you become a florist instead of an archaeologist, because they don't want you to find the wrong, it's like there's certain things that are okay with you finding, other things they are not. But I'll say this, like, that's, at least there's something you can look at and argue with, right? And it's anytime I hate watching, like, the Discovery Channel is both my favorite and most hated thing in the world, because I'll be watching and they're like, well, we found this this shard fragment and it's from and I'm like, nope, no, stop. You can't know what you're telling us. What you can tell us is it's a shard. And it's like, it's archaeology is just as tainted as everything else. It's just as political as anything else. There is so much evidence for the Hebrew people being in Egypt during the period they're supposed to be for the Exodus, and yet literally they can't talk about it. It's like, so let me get this straight. You have a group of Semites living in this region during this time. They have these practices, XYZ, but they weren't the Jewish people. And they're like, yes, they're just some random unknown Semites. But of course, the political structure says, no, you can't tell them that. You can't tell them that the Hebrew people were here because the politicians who are running everything are worried about modern day Israel. And you see this, and it's like this all over the world. Here in America, all human remains are considered to be American Indian, and therefore the tribes take ownership of it. It's like, but we have evidence of skeletal remains that aren't American Indian. Well, but the problem is no one really wants to deal with that. There's a stone here. That's claimed by the Cherokee. The Cherokee's like, this is ours. It's got Hebrew writing on it. It says, for the glory of Judah. And it's like, well, hold up. This is kind of an interesting thing, but the Smithsonian won't release it. They're like, nope, we're not talking about it. They're suing the federal government for it. They still won't release it. So again, it's like, we got some real questions to ask with this, and it goes back to this whole thing. Maybe there is something is preventing us. Something's actively trying to prevent us from uncovering the truth on a lot of these things. Whether it's archaeology, cryptozoology, ufology, who knows? Maybe there's something trying to keep us from making good music. I don't know.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And I just, I keep thinking, though, someone somewhere would come out, even anonymously, I couldn't say the word then, and give some information, give some clue to this. Because it seems like a lot of people holding secrets, and that's usually quite hard to do, isn't it? The more people that know, there's always a whisper. Someone said to someone, there's never seems to be anything. So that makes me think that it isn't all that we think it is. You know, the problem is opinions are so flexible in this subject, and they have to be, because you can never. You don't know which is the right track, do you? You don't know whether you're thinking is right or wrong, or what. And this is going back to what we were talking about before. Is maybe you have to just stick to a line, and keep on that line. Just try it. Eliminate some of the data, and follow the trail on the other bits. Who knows? I don't know.
There's an answer coming eventually. I mean, again, when that answer comes, I don't know. Like you said, maybe it's just about finding the one thing and just getting that one thing. And maybe it's not as grand a conspiracy as we think. Maybe there's a few people who are big, but maybe the real pressure is just we don't want to stand out, right? We don't want to be the one person who seems crazy. So the problem is the people who aren't in a position to really put out information, they don't want to be the guy who's known as that. So what if it's less a grand conspiracy and more just our culture doesn't want to talk about it, and so people are just scared into compliance. So it goes back to, that's why the beauty of the internet. We can all come together and find the few of us who are willing to have these conversations and say, let's have the conversations. But we need to hold ourselves to account. It can't just be, well, this is what we're told. Let's actually find the information. Let's gather the information. Let's do it right, and let's follow the truth wherever it lies.
Wise words for everyone to try now, just to do that, to follow that. Look, we've come to the end of the hour. It's been fascinating. I'm so glad we didn't talk about Bigfoot, because it's so nice to break from it, isn't it? And that's why we do this Anything Goes, isn't it? It's because
because we talk about Bigfoot all the time. I'm glad we didn't talk about him at all today.
Yeah, so it's been really refreshing catching up with you tonight and talking about Bigfoot. So thank you. Thanks to everyone in the chat. Sorry, I don't think there's many questions tonight, but some good comments. Thanks again to the mods. I'll see you in the week on the Researchers Report. I'm back here at the weekend for Hidden Existence Bigfoot Cafe. Go and check out Not Another Bible Study, Jason's channel, and go and buy his book. Contact him to get your signed copy, and he'll even put some kisses and a little emoji drawing on there, I'm sure, at the same time.
Kissy faces and all kinds of things. I sign my heart. I sign hearts on my name.
Oh, sweet. Okay. Everyone, have a good week, and we'll see you all soon. Good night.